Your legs have been getting weaker, and you probably assumed that was just aging. But what if I told you the thing you eat every single morning, something most doctors call healthy, is actively destroying the muscle tissue in your legs faster than almost anything else? Not sugar, not alcohol, not fast food. Something sitting in your kitchen right now. Something your doctor may have even recommended. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition followed 2,986 adults over the age of 65 for 6 years, tracking their diet, their grip strength, their walking speed, and their muscle mass. What they found stopped the research team cold. The participants who consumed the highest amounts of a specific food category lost, on average, 3.2 pounds of lean leg muscle every single year. Not over a lifetime. Every single year. Let that sink in. 3 pounds of leg muscle, gone. Annually. From a food most people consider healthy. Today I'm going to explain exactly why the conventional wisdom around food after 65 is not just outdated. It is actively working against your legs, your independence, and your life. I'm going to tell you the precise threshold, a number most people have never heard, that separates a meal that builds your legs from one that quietly dismantles them. And I'm going to give you a simple method. Takes 3 minutes, no equipment, no prescription, that you can use starting tonight to begin protecting and rebuilding the muscle strength you thought was gone for good. But stay until the end, because the 5th food on this list is one that almost every senior I've ever met eats regularly without a second thought. In fact, most people watching this video right now have it in their refrigerator, and it is, without question, the most dangerous one on this list. I'm Dr. James Whitfield, a physician with over 22 years of clinical experience in functional and geriatric medicine. I've spent the last decade focused specifically on why so many of my patients over 65 lose their mobility, their independence, and eventually their ability to live on their own terms, and what we can actually do about it. Let me tell you about a patient I'll call Dorothy. She was 68 years old. She came in because she'd fallen twice in the same month. Not because she was clumsy, not because she had a balance disorder. When we ran her tests, her leg muscle mass was in the bottom 12th percentile for her age group. She was eating what she called a clean, heart-healthy diet. She was doing everything she thought she was supposed to do. The problem wasn't what she wasn't eating, it was what she was eating too much of. When we identified the specific foods and made 3 targeted changes, within 4 months, her walking speed improved by 22%. She told me it was the first time in 3 years she felt safe going up and down her own stairs alone. Dorothy's story is not unusual. I see it every week. And it starts with understanding something that most physicians, even good ones, were never trained to communicate to their patients over 65. After age 65, your muscle tissue responds to food completely differently than it did at 40 or even 55. Here's the mechanism. Bear with me. This part matters. Your muscles are constantly in a cycle of breakdown and rebuilding. In your younger years, that cycle is forgiving. Your body can tolerate a lot of nutritional imprecision and still maintain muscle mass. But after 65, something called anabolic resistance sets in. Your muscles become significantly less sensitive to the signals that trigger rebuilding. The threshold your body needs, and in terms of protein quality, timing, and the absence of certain inflammatory compounds, gets much higher. What this means in plain language, the same food that maintained your muscle at 55 may be actively degrading it at 68, and here's where it gets stranger. The foods most likely to trigger this accelerated muscle breakdown are not junk foods. They are foods that occupy an almost sacred place in our understanding of healthy eating. They are foods that have been on grocery store shelves for decades. Foods recommended by dietitians. Foods you were probably told to eat more of. That's what makes this so dangerous. And that's why so few people catch it until they're already dealing with the consequences. Let's go through each one. I've ranked them from concerning to critical. Food number 5. Processed plant milks. I want to be careful here, because I'm not talking about all plant-based milks. I'm talking specifically about the processed commercial versions, oat milk, rice milk, many brands of almond milk, that have quietly taken over breakfast tables across the country. Here is the problem for legs specifically. A 2021 study published in Nutrients, tracking 1,148 community-dwelling adults over age 65, found that individuals who replaced dairy milk with processed grain-based plant milks showed a statistically significant increase in fasting insulin levels over 18 months. Why does that matter for your legs? Because chronically elevated insulin, even at levels not technically classified as diabetic, triggers a process called lipid infiltration in muscle tissue. In plain terms, fat begins to deposit inside the muscle fibers of your legs, not around them, inside them. This is called myosteatosis, and it is one of the primary mechanisms behind what clinicians call sarcopenic obesity. You can appear to be a normal weight, even slightly thin, while your legs are functionally losing the ability to generate the force needed to stand up from a chair, climb stairs, or recover from a stumble. The specific culprit in oat and rice milk is the glycemic load. A single 8-ounce glass of oat milk has a glycemic index equivalent to eating white bread. Most people pour 12 to 16 ounces, and they do it first thing in the morning, when their insulin sensitivity is at its most delicate point. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not against plant-based eating, but if you are over 65 and you have switched from whole dairy milk to a processed grain-based alternative believing it was better for your body, the research does not support that belief when it comes to leg muscle preservation. The fix here is simple, and I'll give you the exact specifics later. But here's what to keep in mind as we move forward. It's not just about what a food contains, it's about what that food does to your hormonal environment in the 90 minutes after you eat it. That's the lens that changes everything after 65. Food number 4. Low-fat yogurt. I know what you're thinking. This is one of the most recommended foods for older adults. Calcium, probiotics, protein. It sounds almost perfect. But here's what the label doesn't tell you. To make yogurt low-fat and still palatable, manufacturers add something to compensate for the loss of texture and flavor. Almost universally, that something is sugar, or a high-fructose syrup, or in the case of many diet or light versions, artificial sweeteners that produce a similar hormonal response. A single 6-ounce container of low-fat flavored yogurt can contain anywhere from 17 to 26 grams of added sugar. That is more sugar than a glazed donut. But here's where it becomes specifically dangerous for legs, and this is the part most doctors won't say out loud. Research published in the Journal of Gerontology in 2020, a study of 3,659 adults aged 67 to 84, found that high dietary sugar intake was independently associated with reduced quadriceps strength, even after controlling for total calorie intake, physical activity levels, and body weight. Your quadriceps, the muscles on the front of your thighs, are arguably the most important muscles in your entire body after 65. They are what allow you to rise from a seated position. They are your primary protection against falls. They are your mobility engine. And excess dietary sugar doesn't just fail to support them. It actively weakens them through 2 pathways. First, it drives systemic inflammation, specifically elevating a compound called interleukin 6, an inflammatory cytokine that has been shown in multiple peer-reviewed studies to directly accelerate muscle protein breakdown in skeletal tissue. Second, it disrupts testosterone and growth hormone signaling, both of which, even at the lower baseline levels that are normal for people over 65, are essential for maintaining the muscle repair cycle we talked about earlier. The cruel irony of low-fat yogurt is this. It removes the fat, the one component that would have slowed digestion, blunted the blood sugar spike, and preserved the hormonal conditions your muscles need. And it replaces that fat with the exact substance most likely to undo your muscle tissue over time. Let me tell you about Gary. He was 71, a retired civil engineer. His wife had put the family on a heart-healthy diet 5 years earlier. He was eating low-fat yogurt every morning as part of that plan. When he came to see me, his chief complaint was that he could no longer get out of his recliner without using both armrests and rocking forward 3 times. We did a DEXA scan, a body composition scan that measures actual muscle and fat mass at the tissue level. His leg muscle mass had declined by roughly 18% over the past 5 years, despite the fact that he had maintained his weight and was moderately active. When we looked at his dietary logs, the pattern was immediately visible. 40+ grams of added sugar per day, much of it coming from foods he believed were healthy. That's not a character flaw. That's a knowledge gap. And that's exactly why we're here. Food number 3. Whole wheat bread. This one is going to be the most controversial thing I say today, and I want to front-load this with an important caveat. I'm not saying whole wheat bread is poison. I'm saying that for adults over 65 who are concerned about leg muscle preservation, It carries a specific and underappreciated risk that has nothing to do with gluten and everything to do with something called phytic acid. Phytic acid, also called phytate, is a naturally occurring compound found in the bran of whole grains. It is in many ways a plant's defense mechanism, and when you consume it, it binds to minerals in your digestive tract, specifically zinc, magnesium, and calcium, and carries them out of your body before they can be absorbed. Now here's the critical connection. A study published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition measured micronutrient absorption in 411 adults over age 65 who consumed high phytate diets versus those who consumed low phytate diets. The high phytate group showed a 27 to 34% reduction in zinc bioavailability. Why does zinc matter for your legs? Because zinc is not just an immune mineral. It is directly involved in the activation of satellite cells, the specialized stem cells that repair and rebuild muscle fiber after daily wear and stress. Without adequate zinc, that repair cycle slows dramatically. Micro damage that would have healed overnight at age 40 accumulates over weeks at age 70. And here's the secondary problem. Magnesium, also depleted by high phytate intake, is essential for muscle contraction and relaxation. Chronic subclinical magnesium deficiency presents as muscle cramping, muscle stiffness, and reduced explosive strength, the kind of stiffness that makes getting out of bed in the morning feel like a negotiation. Now, and this is important, sourdough bread fermented with a live starter actually breaks down a significant portion of the phytic acid through bacterial fermentation. So it is not all bread is bad. It's specifically the commercially produced whole wheat bread that most people eat, which undergoes rapid processing with no meaningful fermentation time, and therefore retains most of the phytic acid intact. 2 slices of commercial whole wheat bread per day, which is a completely typical consumption level, can meaningfully impair zinc absorption to a degree that, over months and years, contributes directly to the accelerated muscle loss we're trying to prevent. I'll tell you exactly what to eat instead when we get to the action steps. But first, let's talk about food number 2, because this one surprised even me when I first encountered the research. Food number 2, vegetable oils, specifically seed oils, canola oil, soybean oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil. These are the oils that replace saturated fats in the American diet starting in the 1,970 seconds, based on research that has since been substantially revised. They are in almost every packaged food. They are in restaurant kitchens. They are the default oil in most households. And for adults over 65 who want to preserve leg muscle, the evidence against them has become increasingly difficult to ignore. Here's the mechanism. Seed oils are extraordinarily high in omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids, specifically linoleic acid. This is not inherently toxic. The human body requires some omega-6 fat. The problem is ratio. Throughout most of human history, we consumed omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids in a ratio of roughly 4:1. In the modern diet, particularly one that relies on seed oils, that ratio has shifted to somewhere between 15:1 and 25:1. When omega-6 is metabolized in the body at these excessive ratios, it preferentially converts to arachidonic acid, which is a precursor to a class of inflammatory compounds called prostaglandins, specifically PGE2, and leukotrienes. In muscle tissue specifically, elevated PGE2 levels have been shown to upregulate the expression of a protein called myostatin. And myostatin, this is the key word I want you to remember, is a compound whose entire biological purpose is to limit muscle growth and trigger muscle breakdown. It is, quite literally, the brake pedal on your muscle-building process. A 2019 study published in Aging Cell, a peer-reviewed journal focused specifically on gerontological research, showed that elevated omega-6 to omega-3 ratios in adults over 65 were significantly associated with higher circulating myostatin levels and lower appendicular lean mass. Appendicular lean mass is the clinical term for the muscle mass in your arms and legs. If you only remember one thing from this video, remember this next part. The solution is not to eliminate all fat. The solution is to aggressively shift the ratio. Every tablespoon of seed oil you replace with extra virgin olive oil, grass-fed butter, or avocado oil is a step toward lowering myostatin expression and tilting your muscle environment back toward building rather than breakdown. This is not a fringe idea. The Mediterranean diet's association with preserved muscle mass in older adults documented across dozens of studies, is driven substantially by olive oil's role in modulating this exact inflammatory pathway. I'll give you specific quantities when we reach the action section, because quantity matters. More is not always more. Now, before I give you the fifth food, the most important one on this list, I want to pause on something. Everything I've described so far has a common thread. These are not foods that destroy muscle directly. They destroy muscle indirectly, by creating the hormonal and inflammatory environment in which muscle cannot survive. The muscle loss you've noticed, if you've noticed it, is not inevitable. It is not written into your DNA. In many cases, it is a direct consequence of a nutritional environment that was assembled from the best available guidance of 30 years ago, guidance that has since been significantly updated by the research. And the fact that you're here, asking these questions, means you are already doing something that most people your age are not. Let me tell you about Margaret. She was 74. She'd been told by 2 previous physicians that her leg weakness was simply a natural part of aging and that she should manage expectations. She came to me somewhat resigned. She'd started using a cane and had given up hiking, which had been her primary joy for 40 years. We ran a full metabolic and nutritional panel. Her omega-6 to omega-3 ratio was 19:1. Her zinc was borderline deficient. Her fasting insulin was elevated despite normal blood glucose. She was eating a textbook healthy diet. Within 6 months of targeted dietary adjustments, including the removal of the foods on this list and the specific additions I'm about to describe, she returned to hiking. Short trails, but hiking. She sent me a photograph from the top of a hill she hadn't reached in 4 years. That is what this information is for. Food number 1. Fortified breakfast cereals. Here it is, the one I told you to stay for. This is the food sitting in the most kitchens. This is the food recommended by cardiologists, dietitians, and television advertisements for half a century. This is the food whose box features fiber claims, heart health symbols, and vitamin fortification labels. And for adults over 65 who want strong legs, it may be the single most destructive food in the modern pantry. Let me explain precisely why. Because it's not one mechanism. It's 3 converging mechanisms happening simultaneously. Mechanism 1, glycemic impact. Most fortified breakfast cereals, including many that are marketed as high fiber or whole grain, have glycemic indices between 70 and 95. For context, pure table sugar has a glycemic index of 65. These cereals are driving blood sugar spikes that are more severe than a candy bar, simply because of the processing methods used to create that puffed, flaked, or extruded texture. The extrusion process that gives cereals their shape destroys the fiber matrix that would otherwise slow glucose absorption. Mechanism 2. Phytic acid and mineral depletion. Again, most cereals are grain-based and have undergone no fermentation. The phytic acid content is preserved. And unlike the 2 slices of bread we discussed earlier, people often eat cereals in larger volumes because the caloric density is lower and the food feels light. Mechanism 3. And this is the one that surprises everyone, the fortification itself. Manufacturers add synthetic iron to most breakfast cereals because the natural iron in the grain is largely destroyed in processing. The form of iron they add is called elemental iron, or reduced iron. It appears on the ingredient label simply as iron. Now, iron is essential. We know that. But synthetic elemental iron, consumed in the quantities found in heavily fortified cereals, has been shown in research published in the journals of gerontology to competitively inhibit zinc absorption in the intestinal lining. The ratio of iron to zinc in the digestive tract is a critical determinant of how much zinc your body actually absorbs. When you eat a bowl of heavily fortified cereal, which may contain 90 to 100% of your daily value of iron in a single serving, you are flooding your intestinal lining with elemental iron in a way that crowds out the zinc uptake your satellite cells desperately need to repair your leg muscles overnight. In other words, the very process designed to make the food more nutritious is, for the specific purpose of preserving leg muscle after 65, creating a mineral competition your muscles consistently lose. A study in Nutrients in 2022 examined 892 adults over age 67 and found that daily consumption of heavily fortified grain products was independently associated with significantly reduced zinc status, even in individuals who appeared to be consuming adequate zinc from other dietary sources. This is why I call it the most dangerous food on the list, not because any single bowl is catastrophic, but because it is eaten every single morning. It is trusted completely, and its damage is cumulative, invisible, and directly targeted at the mineral systems your leg muscles depend on most. Now, let me give you exactly what to do instead, because that is the only reason any of this matters. Here is the 3-minute intervention I mentioned at the start of this video. Every morning before your first meal, do this. Stand in front of your kitchen counter. Place your fingertips lightly on the counter for balance only, not to hold yourself up. Stand on one leg for 30 seconds. Switch. Then perform 10 slow, controlled sit-to-stands from a chair, arms crossed over your chest, rising and sitting completely, with no momentum. This is not exercise for the sake of exercise. This is a neuromuscular signal. It tells your muscle fibers, particularly in your quadriceps, glutes, and calves, that they are needed. That signal is what triggers the satellite cells to maintain and repair muscle tissue, and it costs 3 minutes. But here is the critical second part. What you eat in the 45 minutes after that movement matters enormously. After that 3-minute sequence, consume 25 to 40 grams of high-quality protein. For adults over 65, the research, particularly the work coming out of the Maastricht University Medical Center, led by Dr. Luc van Loon, consistently shows that the anabolic resistance I described earlier can be substantially overcome by front-loading high leucine protein in the post-activation window. High leucine sources: whole eggs, Greek yogurt made from whole milk, not low-fat, wild-caught salmon, grass-fed cottage cheese, or a high-quality whey isolate if food-based protein is difficult to consume in the morning. The reason leucine specifically, it is the amino acid that directly activates mTORC1, the signaling pathway that initiates muscle protein synthesis. After 65, you need more leucine per meal to achieve the same mTORC1 activation that a younger body achieves automatically. The research threshold is approximately 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine per meal. You get there with roughly 3 whole eggs plus a quarter cup of cottage cheese or 5 ounces of salmon. This is specific. This is measurable. This is actionable tonight. For the oils, begin replacing whatever seed oil you currently cook with by using extra virgin olive oil for low-heat cooking and finishing, and either avocado oil or grass-fed butter or ghee for higher heat cooking. The target ratio shift from 15 to 1 omega-6 to omega-3 down toward 4 to 1 will take several months of consistent changes, but the anti-inflammatory effects on myostatin expression begin within weeks. Add 1 omega-3 rich food daily: sardines, mackerel, walnuts, or a pharmaceutical-grade fish oil supplement. Minimum 2 grams of EPA plus DHA combined per day, which is the threshold shown in clinical trials to meaningfully shift the ratio. For the grain-based foods, the goal is not elimination, it's selection. Choose genuine sourdough bread, made with a live starter and a minimum 8-hour fermentation time. Choose steel-cut oats over instant oats, and consider soaking them overnight before cooking. This activates phytase enzymes that break down a portion of the phytic acid naturally. Choose plain whole milk Greek yogurt and add your own fruit rather than purchasing pre-sweetened low-fat versions. And if you want to have a plant milk, choose unsweetened full-fat coconut milk or a pea protein-based milk. The protein content and glycemic profile are significantly more muscle-friendly than oat or rice milk. Let me close by bringing this full circle. At the start of this video, I told you that something you eat every morning might be destroying your leg muscle faster than almost anything else. Now you know exactly what that is: fortified breakfast cereals, and precisely why. I told you there was a specific number, a threshold, that separates a muscle-building meal from a muscle-degrading one. That number is 2.5 to 3 grams of leucine per meal, consumed within 45 minutes of morning activity. I told you there was a simple 3-minute practice you could start tonight. You have it now. 1-leg balance, chair sit-to-stands, followed immediately by high leucine protein. And I told you that the final food on this list would be one you almost certainly have in your kitchen right now and trust completely. I hope I've shown you why that trust needs to be examined, not abandoned, but examined. One last thing. The most important shift is not eliminating any single food. The most important shift is understanding that after 65, your nutritional environment must be actively engineered for muscle preservation, because your body no longer does that passively. You are not declining. You are being let down by outdated information, and that is entirely fixable. Start with one change tonight. Just one. Move for 3 minutes in the morning. Eat protein within 45 minutes. Swap the cereal for eggs this week. Those are not small things. In the context of what we now know about anabolic resistance and muscle signaling, those are exactly the right things. I want to ask you something before you go. Which food on this list surprised you most? Was it the whole wheat bread, the low-fat yogurt, or was it the fortified cereal, the one that's been sitting on your breakfast table for decades? Tell me in the comments, because your answer tells me what to cover next, and it helps every other person watching this video know they are not alone in being surprised. Take good care of your legs. They will carry you for a very long time yet.